The main story was the American election, of course.
And what did you say about it?
No, just about neck and neck, and because this is Poland, of course, that the votes of the Polish diaspora could be significant, particularly in Pennsylvania, where there are apparently 800,000.
Yeah, we're coming to you from Warsaw, Poland.
Warsaw, Poland, yes, not Warsaw, any of the other American Warsaws.
One of the oldest cities in Europe. Yeah. 1,000 years old. It's about 1,000 years old as a settlement, isn't it? Even older. Yes, and yeah, so they're saying the Polish diaspora might be.
And of course, they're all very much allegedly, they're all very much in favor of Trump. Largely because under Trump, the visa requirement for Polish citizens was removed. And they see Trump, or in the past at least, Trump has been very pro-Poland in terms of, because Poland has spent a lot on military equipment and such like. That has pleased Trump, particularly as a lot of the hardware is coming from America. So another reason for him to be pleased.
Yeah, makes sense. The thing about those visas, for people who don't know, was important that all of the countries in the EU had visa-less travel to the United States because they were members of the EU, except Poland. Poland was the last country, if you can believe it. Yes. And with all the immigrants we've let in, it's hard to believe that they kept Poles out for so long.
Well, you see the same in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
They let any Tom, Dick, or Harry in if they're prepared to shout Allah Akbar and make a nuisance of themselves. But if some British citizen should have the misfortune to marry somebody from abroad, getting his wife into the country, or husband in the reverse case, is exceedingly difficult.
Yeah.
Because they need to make space for all the people who bear us ill will.
Well, it's just the message. The message is don't do it legally, which is a stupid message.
It is a
governments have been sending about immigration. But I didn't want to go into immigration.
No. I was just
we can do another whole program about that, or talk as long as you want. We'll get some expert on who can tell us the ins and outs.
Yes, of course.
Of the policies. But right now, I wanted to talk about the election because it's coming up tomorrow, and we're not going to stay long because it's getting late. And we're going to be on Wednesday with a long program with Randy Mott, and possibly with the who's the head of the Republicans in Poland. He's a longtime DC insider, and we might get the Democrat, leader of the Democrats in Poland, who's a colleague from the Chamber of Commerce. We might get him from the American Chamber of Commerce in Poland. We might get him to come along. So Randy Mott is the Republican, and the Democrat, the head of Democrats in Poland, is David D. Benedetti. Randy's from a long-time Washington fellow who lives here and in the States, travels back and forth a lot, and is presently engaged. He's a lawyer. He's presently engaged in a fascinating case, which I won't go into unless he wants to go into it. I'd devote a whole program to that. It's amazing. He's a very good lawyer, Randy. And oddly enough, David D. Benedetti, the head of the Democrats, is a lawyer too. He's from Ohio, though.
Yeah, I know David.
Yeah. Well, I might say that you're a lawyer. Yeah.
Well, I am. Of course, yeah. Terrible. Let's shoot all the lawyers. Was that Richard II, Shakespeare? Can't remember.
Let's kill all the lawyers. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of the Shakespeare histories. And I can't even remember who says it, but yes, that is true. Let's kill all the lawyers. But let's not kill you, and let's not kill our friends.
No.
Let's kill the ones we don't like, perhaps. Let's kill the ones we've spent a lot of money on, who were annoying.
Exactly.
At any rate, I was talking to Randy briefly today Randy Mott, head of the Republicans, as I said, and he says it all comes down to Pennsylvania, which seems reasonable. I mean, I don't know what you've been coming across, but we've got those 7 states. And really, no one knows right now how it's going to pan out. But we do know this. We know that in terms of Trump, that he's in a much better position than he was in 16 or 2016 or 2020, in terms of the popular vote and in terms of where he is versus the Democrats by state in the battleground, so-called battleground state. Battleground states, of course, everyone knows by now. We'll just say it's Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and what's the other one? Is there another one?
I think just been through 7.
That was 7, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the battleground states. What's your take on what's going to happen? I mean, too close to call, but
too close to call, I think, is the first thing, which I realise is not a very helpful commentary at all. I mean, I think the bigger worry is whatever the result is, to what extent this leads to some form of civil strife, largely because, of course, there are state actors like Russia who are determined, particularly if the Republicans lose, to stir up all sorts of mischief, alleging that the election has somehow been stolen or whatever, based, of course, on what happened last time. Indeed,
how do you mean? Because it was so close the last?
Because it was so close.
Yeah.
And indeed, I think in a rally yesterday, Trump even suggested that because it takes so long to count the votes, therefore the only conclusion you can draw is that the people doing the counting are up to no good, which I think is probably unfair. I would find it hard to believe that the American system is so full of bad people that they are manipulating elections in this way.
No, I mean, it seems that, I mean, there's always been funny business at the ballot box, particularly in big cities, or particularly, some counties, even in rural counties, where they were under the thrall of one particular authoritarian local type. But, they say Mayor Daley gave Kennedy the election. Mayor Daley in Chicago put the election over, put Kennedy over the top against Nixon in 1960.
Well, they're true. They did say that, actually, yes.
With the help of the local mafia. So Giancana, wasn't that his name, Sam Giancana?
Something, yeah.
Apparently he and Kennedy apparently shared a mistress, which is really not good for security, national security. At any rate, what was her name? Judith Exner? I think so.
I can't remember.
I think that's who it was. At any rate, I've seen elections in Britain. I've seen elections in Poland. I've seen elections in Nicaragua. And I was once doing a story when there was an election in Macedonia, not to mention working in politics in Britain and in the United States. I worked for a senator in the United States as an intern. But so I've seen a lot about elections from the inside and the outside, and usually the process is pretty smooth. Yeah. I mean, 2000 was very, very close. Gore and Bush, for those who are very young and don't remember, look it up, because it was 25 years ago, 24 years ago, was very close, and it eventually went to the Supreme Court, as those who read about elections will know.
The so-called hanging chads.
The hanging chads, yeah. In other words, the computer did not punch out the holes in the vote cards sufficiently, so therefore you couldn't tell. You couldn't, and it wasn't a legal vote unless all the holes were punched in the card, right? Isn't that it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so that hanging chad means one that wasn't punched all the way through. Okay, so you'd have to look at the ballots to figure out how that worked, but that was the basis of it, as I think I remember and you remember. Isn't that right?
Yeah, in Florida in that year.
I'm asking you for your legal opinion on that. I'm not really. Anyway, so now this one's too close to call, but Trump is in a better position, right? So I find a few things that have happened lately are very strange. One of those is this talking about Madison Square Garden, the Madison Square Garden rally, which took place a week ago on Sunday, and which Hillary Clinton disastrously compared to a Hitler Bund, which was the Hitler support group of German Americans who held a Madison Square Garden rally in '38, I think it was, so a year before the war.
But lots of people do things in Madison Square Gardens because it's a big venue in the center of Manhattan, so everybody uses it for everything.
It's disgraceful for Hillary Clinton to say that. It's unbelievable. It's dishonest. It is looking. It is what's the word when you look down on people?
Disdainful.
Yeah, it's disdainful of the voters, patronizing of the voters. Yeah, and it's really just a nasty thing to say. Douglas Murray talked about being at the rally, and he said it was, people just having a good time and enjoying the company and the speeches and the rally. It wasn't, there were no Goebbels speeches. There was a comedian who said something dumb about Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that just a
Let's face it. Who in their life hasn't said something dumb about Puerto Rico?
Well, there you go. There you go.
I mean, honestly, Puerto Rico, really? No,
they don't have the votes anyway.
People don't even know where Puerto Rico is, do they?
No.
You know where it is?
Yeah, it's in the Caribbean.
It is, but do you know where?
I mean, what I would call the Caribbean. I know technically parts of the Caribbean are really something else, but you know what I mean.
Well, if you're in Key West.
Yeah, I know where it is. It's Key West. You go west and south of it.
No, it's south. Due south is to Havana, is due south. And if you go right through the Cuba, then you'll eventually hit Puerto Rico.
When I said west, I meant south and east.
Yeah, well, Puerto Rico is just below Cuba. That's the
yeah.
So because a lot of people think it's to the east of Cuba. I always thought it. I mean, maybe a lot of people don't think that. Maybe it's just me. But I always thought it was to the east. But it's amazing. It's just under Cuba, as I remember. So anyway, that's where Puerto Rico is. It's not a bad place. There's always been jokes about Puerto Ricans, but there's jokes about Southerners too.
Jokes about everybody from
jokes about the British,
depending on who you ask.
Of course, you got to grin and bear it. Roll with the punches. At any rate, so then Biden made they're just acting like, we said it's like high school, didn't we? Where you have the cliques attacking each other.
It is a bit pathetic.
And Biden says, they're the only people who are what is it? A floating island of garbage is what the comedian said, which is kind of stupid anyway. But it is very stupid.
Biden said the only garbage are their supporters.
Which then they tried to spin it. What he was saying was their supporters garbage, but he forgot to say, the only garbage was their supporters.
But what's worse than
possessive garbage? But
but what's worse than this is the White House record then put the apostrophe between the R and the S to support Biden's claim he was just talking about one supporter, i.e. the man who made the joke. But that is an ex post facto attempt to justify his remarks.
Well, the whole point is Biden's been out to lunch for such a long time. And now people still keep pretending that dementia patients don't say bizarre things. Of course they do all the time. He's been saying bizarre things for years. Why should anyone be surprised?
Well,
I mean,
exactly.
we should
The,
feel
but,
sorry.
but the most bizarre thing we heard throughout this campaign was the Democrats, until relatively recently, assuring everybody that Biden was the man to do the job and Biden was in tip-top condition, mentally and physically. That's a bizarre thing we all heard, and everybody knew that wasn't true. And then all of a sudden, as if by magic, overnight, complete flip. It's now Kamala Harris, a woman who, last time round, was the first to be eliminated. So unpopular was she. And now she's this great savior of the United States. I mean, it's just hard to believe that these people with a straight face can face the American people and claim that this is the candidate, the woman who was party to the deception or the attempted deception on the American people by supporting a candidate who, for whatever reason, was just clearly not up to the job. If he was 30 years younger, the job is difficult. And to lie to everybody, mislead everybody, in league with the mainstream media in America, now, of course, all of us know, well, no, it's Kamala all the time, and we knew Joe wasn't capable, blah, blah, blah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and then they suddenly say, suddenly last summer, wasn't that title of a Tennessee Williams movie or something? Anyway, so some movie. Suddenly last summer, they turn on a dime and say, oh, this guy's got to go. He's ridiculous. He is. It's impossible. How could we have this guy? Where they've been saying right up to that debate that he's fine. I mean, as you say, everyone knowing that he wasn't. It's just the most bizarre. It's almost the politics on both sides has become sort of
well, this is
S&M fetish, you know.
This is the worrying thing for the future, that on both sides it's become a bit weird. Do you think
sadomasochistic, ritualized fetishism?
This is the third election in a row where I suspect most voters think, well, I'd rather not have to choose between two equally undesirable candidates for different reasons. I mean, let's face it, you would hope America, with all the talent in America, in the United States, you could produce a couple of better candidates.
Well, you'd hope, wouldn't you?
You would have hoped.
But it's not the case, evidently. There are better candidates about, I think, but there are plenty of better candidates. I mean, the mayor of Pennsylvania for the Democrats, Haley is her last name, from South Carolina, former governor Nikki Haley. Yeah, these are both better candidates for the Democrats. In fact, Haley was challenging, as everyone knows, Trump right up to the end, and the other fella would have made a much better vice presidential candidate, but I mean, she didn't choose him, maybe because he would have made her look bad because he's very sharp, and the other guy, what's his name, Waltz, doesn't make anybody look bad because he's not sharp. I mean, maybe he's a decent guy, but you know, he's not a very good debater, is he?
No.
You know, the thing is, whoever wins, it's not going to be the end of things, because it's not about these two people. What the problem is as I was saying on a previous post that I made this afternoon, it's the bureaucracy that we face. It's this overweening government corporate alliance of bureaucrats, which is killing us. It's strangling the life.
It's killing us. It's debauching the treasury.
Yeah.
It really, and it's the same in the United Kingdom. I mean, the budget last week by the new Labour Party. I mean, they talked up before the election growth, and they've produced a budget which is all about increasing taxes and borrowing, but not in a good way.
Well, this is what people are afraid the Democrats will do.
I'm putting the boot into small business.
This is what people are afraid the Democrats will do, the same type of thing the Labour Party's done.
Because unfortunately, the politics is dominated, it seems, by people who've never actually woken up in the morning and worked out what they are going to do to generate $1 of income.
Well, they don't have to, because everything's paid for.
That's my point. They don't have to. They have all worked in the public sector. So they've never had to face the possibility that if they don't perform on that particular day, there may be no food for their children by the evening, or there may be no way to pay the salaries of those people who work for them. Tremendous responsibility, which you and I have had in the past. And it is, if you employ somebody, and this is what came when I used to employ people, it did come home to me. You think there is somebody who's put their faith in you and your organization to be able to, at the end of the month, have the money to pay their salary. And that's a tremendous responsibility. And these politicians have never done that because it's very easy. They can just go to the cupboard and just take whatever they want.
Yes, I know exactly what this means because.
Yeah, well, you're still involved in some ways, so because you do know what it's
on the board of a company that is the biggest private company in the poorest part of Europe, Poland. So I'm very familiar with these kind of things and trying to keep a business running in very difficult times, especially since COVID. It's always difficult.
But especially when your burdens are made more difficult by governments who insist on actually interfering and loading more and more
tax, for example.
More and more tax, yes. I best describe. There was a very good article in the Times 2 weeks ago on a Sunday by Matthew Sayed about America.
Yeah.
And about these greyhounds, i.e. the entrepreneurial class in America, who have these sclerotic bureaucrats on their back, slowing them down and making their life more difficult.
Well, this is what Elon Musk is all about. That's what he's saying is that he wants to really have a go at trimming people out of the government. I mean, not only did they raise taxes, but they just hired 100,000 new IRS agents, tax agents, to go after the people. This is crazy. The government is the people. The government is created by the money that people pay to the government for the government to serve them, not to be slaves to the government and pay for being slaves. It is the craziest goddamn thing that you can fucking imagine. And it goes on and on and on. It's absurdism. It is the theater of the absurd in politics. It makes all that French philosophy of the mid 20th century look absolutely cogent, appropriate. So it's the bureaucracy and the overwhelming size of the government, its interference in everything. We need a government, but we should agree that we don't need a government to tell us what to do 24/7.
This is the point, that governments have gone, and they've got, as you would say, mission creep.
Yeah, they got mission.
And the worst example of this, of course, is the European Union. There's a good example of how it seeks to involve itself in things which are much better handled by the countries who are members of the European Union. They don't need to regulate everything. And
is the European Union going to survive? This is the
this is the point. If we go back 20 years,
good topic.
We go back 20 years, the EU economy was the same size as the United States. The United States economy is now 50% bigger. The EU economy used to be 25% of world GDP. It's now down to 16. Okay, some of that is growth elsewhere. But the point is, and we see this with particularly this green agenda, the politicians are making our people poorer.
Yeah.
And by making them poorer, you're making them less secure.
Yes.
And this is, and then by, I know we don't want to talk about it, then by having uncontrolled immigration, you're making them less secure both economically and physically.
Yeah, I mean, this appears to be it is self-evident, but a lot of this is done secretly by the left wing of the Democratic Party, particularly pushing this sort of thing, but sanctioned by Biden himself and the people working for him. What's his name? The fellow who's in charge of immigration. I forget right now, but begins with an M. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyone can look it up. But the point is that they have pushed this even secretly, this immigration, and it makes it look like, even if it's not the intent, that the intent is to fill up the country with these people, send them particularly to the, make them beholden to the Democrat Party, and don't require voter ID so these people can vote, whether they're citizens or not, or even have green cards. And then you've created a ready-made group of people that you can place strategically exactly where you want in any swing state, and thereby take over the government forever.
Well, and that
So
was
that's what it looks like.
Well, that was certainly Tony Blair's policy in the United Kingdom. We had controlled immigration up until 1997. It's got progressively worse since then, because he thought this was a way of teaching everybody a lesson for having the temerity sometimes not to have voted for Labour.
Yeah, if you
and that even he now has realised it was a mistake, but it's too late. Very easy to realise something is a mistake when people tell you it's a mistake. You do it anyway deliberately, and then pretend years later it was somehow an accident.
The funny thing is, when you talk about this, don't you find when you mention this, people say, "But we need immigration," and
well, actually,
no one ever said that we need proper immigration.
We do.
Vetted immigration.
But it is quite clear that in the UK that large corporations used cheap labour from abroad instead of investing in plant and machinery and computers and stuff which would do the work of people. And we end up employing people who are of low economic value, who themselves then, of course, need hospitals, housing, schools, etc. So it's a giant Ponzi scheme which is simply not working. Last year, legally, 1% of for the first time, I think I mentioned on a previous program, for the first time last year since records began, more people died than were born in the United Kingdom. Yet the population increased by 1% down to immigration. Now, 1% is about a city the size of Leeds. Well, nobody was building the equivalent of the hospitals they have in Leeds, or the houses they have in Leeds, or recruiting the number of doctors they have in Leeds.
1% is 600,000 people?
600,000 people or thereabouts, yeah, legally. Well, we don't need that population growth legally. We don't need it at all. What we need...
Yeah, what do you think this election is really about in the United States? You just had your one in Britain not long ago, and it's already turning into a disaster. But what do you think the election in the United States is really about? I mean, we said bureaucracy. Is there something else that we're missing here?
I mean, well,
it's about taming bureaucracy and taming expenditure.
It is, but yeah. I mean, the problem is Trump really able and willing to do that? I mean, he talks about doing it, but I mean, when there was last on his watch, the economy seemed to perform rather better, but there was still a lot of expenditure.
Well, yeah, he didn't cut the deficit.
No, he didn't cut the deficit. And this is the problem. All our countries now are facing huge debt, which has to be repaid at some point.
Well, don't forget what George Bush II did. He got us involved in those two wars that cost us an absolute bomb every year. I didn't mean to say that, but it cost us a lot.
Well, think what would have happened. Think what would happen in Ukraine if they had had all the weapons the Americans abandoned in Afghanistan.
Well, that's true. But
but exactly, that's how much
stuff. A different point. I mean,
I was reading actually the Taliban have learned how to repair. The Taliban have learned how to repair the helicopters.
Who? What?
The Taliban have learned how to repair some of those helicopters which you left behind, which were allegedly disabled.
Who's teaching them?
I don't know, but they're managing to do it apparently. They've repaired a few.
That must be the Chinese, huh?
Well, whoever's doing it, somebody's doing it. This is the problem. We need to be vigilant, and we're abandoning whole parts of the world to the Chinese. Africa is a good example.
Okay, we're straying though a little bit from the topic.
Yeah.
which is going back to the
Well,
election.
I think the topic is about two different conceptions of American involvement and engagement in the world.
You think that's the foreign policy for sure.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. If you are the United States, everything you do as the leader, the biggest economy and the leader of the so-called free world, the democratic world, because there are a huge amount of military dictatorships and civilian dictatorships
tremendous
in the
number.
world. Yeah, much more than there are democracies. If you are in that position and you control the trade lanes and you have the largest by far navy and merchant marine for trade, then you must be responsible. You cannot avoid that.
You cannot opt out essentially because your own national interest doesn't allow you to.
And that's why this crazy isolationism is not going to work. I mean, it's a disastrous idea. I mean, the United States does very well makes a lot of money. It creates a lot of wealth off of its foreign business for American business.
Of course.
So there's a business proposition involved too, a huge one. So it's not just babysitting the world. It's also
but there are many parts of the world or countries of the world which are hostile to American interests and are jealous of America, who are actively engaged in undermining America's position in the world. So unless America is prepared to allow its position to be undermined, ultimately to the disadvantage of America, unfortunately, it has to get involved.
Yeah,
I think previous American presidents have understood that.
So as we go into tomorrow, we've got this, some would say a Hobson's choice, but the world won't end despite what both parties are saying.
No.
But we've got to attack the deficit, and America has to keep up. America has to attack the deficit, and it has to keep up its leadership position in the world, because the world is a vacuum without that leadership.
Well, exactly, it is a vacuum, and nobody else is capable of doing that, or rather, nobody else is capable of doing it in a way we would find agreeable. I don't want to live in a world run by President Xi.
No, who wants to do that? And I think people don't boil it down to these very basic ideas.
Or not that it would be, or run by President Putin, or people of that ilk.
Or them together, this BRICS countries. Yeah.
Them together. Well, yes, them together with a bit of North Korea thrown into the mix.
Absolutely.
And that's what this is.
Is that enough for tonight? Oh, sorry.
I think so. No, I think it is. But I mean, the trouble is, what we have just talked about has not been clearly articulated by either candidate.
I know.
And this is the problem.
Seems so simple, doesn't it?
It's simple to you and I, and it was always simple, I think, to politicians before.
Why is it not simple to politicians now?
Because now everything has become far too polarized. It's become far too partisan, and it's about scoring points off the other side rather than actually looking about. Yeah, it's the old cliche, but it's about reorganizing deck chairs on the Titanic instead of getting down below and fixing that bloody big hole. It's the water line.
That's the problem, the hole in the water line.
Exactly.
That's going to sink everything, right?
It is going to sink everything.
Okay, Nicholas. Thank you very much. Nicholas Richardson.
Good.
I'm Will Richardson. We should call this program The Richardsons. I know a few more we can get on. I have a cousin in Virginia we can get on. I have a couple of ex-wives we can get on. You got a couple of ex-wives, or 5 or 6, I don't know. And we could just get all these people on and just shout at each other. It'd be great fun. We'll make Ozzy Osbourne's show look boring.
It will.
Okay.
Okay, great. See you on Wednesday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good
Okay.
evening.
Yep. Have a swinging rest of the evening. Bye.
Okay, ciao.
Ciao. I will be back on Wednesday.